Asalaamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatahu. This is Sihr's sister A. I'm just here with another sister. I'm going to interview her, inshallah, about Jinn and the Sihr of separation. The case is basically of a married couple who have been experiencing trouble with Sihr and possession from the beginning of the marriage. Okay, so I'd just like to ask you, when did you first find out about the Sihr?
The first time we found out about the Sihr was after me and my husband had a really bad argument with all the family got involved, and his father suggested that perhaps there was nazar or something going on, so we should go see a Raki that he knew, Abu Hanifa. So we went to see him, and that's when all the problems surfaced.
What were the strange things that you first noticed?
Well, doing the ruqya, he Abu Hanifa told him to signal as to if he feels anything, and then he started signaling to him, saying he's feeling something in his stomach, he's feeling pain, and he started crying and telling Abu Hanifa to stop it, and he was pushing him and stomping his legs, and after the ruqya was even over, he was still crying, and Abu Hanifa then said that yes, he's got a jinn inside of him, and he didn't tell us much at the time since it was our first appointment, and gave us ruqya water and sent us on our way home. During the whole journey home, he was crying and making strange facial expressions, and even when we got home, he was just crying randomly, and he couldn't control it.
So, what were the nighttime symptoms that he experienced?
He would see dreams with the same woman, I think, come to him in his dream, and he would have experienced wet dreams. He would be very hot at night time, excessively sweating, and sometimes he would tense up, and um, that's it.
And how did all of this impact you?
I didn't understand what was going on at the time. The main problem I had was the abusive language towards me that I would receive, especially when I would put Quran on at the night, and he would say things like, "I can't wait for you to go back to your mum's house," or
What helped with his symptoms?
um, what I would do is at night time I would put on a couple of surahs on headphones, make him listen to it before going to sleep, and obviously I researched what surahs were the best. And while he was listening to the Quran, he would get erections, or he would try to distract me and seduce me, or just start saying he's hungry, or moaning that he's got a headache. He often had quite a lot of headaches, but afterwards, after listening to the Quran, he would be less erratic and inappropriate, because what he would do is with his family, the kind of jokes he makes are very inappropriate and quite rude, like bullying the kids and things. He would just be calmer. And I did ruqya bath once, and once he went in the bath, he started wiggling his tongue and things like this. And then after the bath, I think the bath was very effective because he went to sleep, and then for the next couple of days he was quite in control of himself, and he could even read Quran for hours and only have a slight stomach ache, and he became more in control. The most important thing I would recommend is going to the mosque for Fajr and Isha. Once he started doing that with his father for like 5 days, it was the most profound difference. He had a lot more insight about what was going on with him, because before he would not even realize. And that was the best advice I think the Raki out of everything gave us.
You mentioned an interesting point there because you said you made him listen to the best surahs. What do you mean by that, and what surahs were they?
Um, I went on Kalamullah and they had a couple of books about ruqya and jinn treatment, and there's a couple of verses in Surah Maryam, Surah Hashr, Surah Jinn, those ones. And because he would get really fussy and he wouldn't want to listen to it. Obviously, the jinn doesn't want to listen to it. So then he would make demands about what kind of speaker he wants to listen to, how long he wants to listen to it. And so then I had to choose the speakers that he liked and short surahs like Surah Jinn to be more effective in the time space that I had.
So, what was his ibadah like during this whole process? What was he like when he was, say, before you made him listen to the surahs, before this routine that he had? What was he like, and what did he slowly become like? With his attitude to Salah and the Quran and things like that. I mean, you just touched up on it, but was he worse before?
Um, Before he started going to the mosque for Fajr and Isha, he would very delay his prayers and read them very rushed and not really concentrate well in his prayers. And he would listen to his ruqya for 2 hours in the morning and in the night, but that would say he would never do anything extra and kind of avoided it. But after he started going to the mosque, he voluntarily read Quran instead of listening to it because he liked that more.
What happened to the nighttime symptoms whilst you started the treatment?
After the ruqya bath, he had a very peaceful sleep. He was not sweating. He didn't have any kind of weird dreams. And days where he had done less listening to Quran, it would definitely be worse at night.
So, what was your ruqya treatment? What did it involve?
Once I would try to get him to drink ruqya water, 2 glasses a day, rub ruqya oil on him before he goes to sleep, the listen to the ruqya audio for once in the morning, once in the night, and the ruqya bath. But once when I was putting the ruqya water on him, he would always hate it, and he wouldn't. And because the Raki suggested that you rub the ruqya water on your body, Jin in particular hated that really badly, and he hated it very much, and he would never let me rub it on his chest. But on his face it was fine, but on his chest he would be like, no, get away from me, and get very aggressive. Once I was forcing him to do it because he was getting quite aggressive towards me, and I realized that the jinn was surfacing. I tried to get him to drink the water, and he started spitting at me and becoming very aggressive and pushing me. And then I basically decided to get the water and start splashing it on him and making the jinn's life a misery and being quite forceful with the jinn so that it knows that he can't be aggressive towards me. And I put my hand on his head and I read Ayatul Kursi on him.
So you were being forceful with the jinn, and you've said that despite making excuses when you wanted to listen to the Quran, how did you realize that there may be a difference in his personality and it may be due to the jinn? And how did you deal with the jinn, let's say, when it surfaced?
The difference between my husband and the jinn is quite apparent because the jinn is quite childish and his excuses are very childish, like I'm hungry. My husband, when he was himself and when I made him listen to the Quran, he would just comply and just be quiet and just get on with it. Once I made my husband listen to the Quran and he didn't want to put the headphones in his ears, and he grabbed my arm and squeezed my arm and it was really hurting me and trying to twist my arm, and that's obviously the jinn. So I tried to force the headphones back into his ears, and I said, "You're not hurting me." And he just hid himself under the blanket like a child. So that's how you can tell. And I decided I'm not putting up with this. So I pulled the blanket off of him and shoved the headphones in his ears, because I think it's different in different cases, but I think the best thing to do is show to the jinn that you're not scared and you're strong, and then they will become scared of you. And I might be different in different cases, but I don't believe that a jinn would actually physically hit you really aggressively if you show that you are not scared.
What were your marital arguments like through all of this? How did the jinn impact your marriage in that way?
We would, because we were newly married, we argued about a lot of things, and adjusting to living in his family's house was always quite difficult. And a small matter would escalate into a really large ordeal. He would be himself at the beginning of the argument, but as soon as he gets frustrated, you can see his anger is excessive towards even such a small thing. And now that he's more in control, like, it's more apparent when he starts to get frustrated. That's when I stop and calm the situation down and talk about it.
How do you control his anger from escalating? What helps control his anger, and what helps you in that situation where he's becoming really angry?
As soon as I notice that his voice is getting louder or he's talking more aggressively, I will be quiet. I'll let him finish his sentence, and I will say, "Okay, you need to calm down." And then I just let him talk out what he's feeling, and I don't interrupt. And then when he's calmed down, then we talk about it again.
What advice would you give to men or even women who are suffering from jinn possession with regards to their marital arguments and their anger? What do you think they should do? What advice do you have?
I think if you know that you're going to get very angry, that you should tell your spouse that you don't want to talk about this matter because you feel like you will get quite emotional about it and things will escalate. If it's a controversial issue, you should leave it until later when the emotions have calmed down and you can talk about it calmly.
You've just had experience dealing with a family where several people were suffering from jinn possession. What was that like, and what did you do to help them deal with this?
The jinn possession occurred in a small girl who was 8 years old and a boy who was 18. And with the child, I found that the more time you spend with them and involve them in Islamic activities, it's quite easy to control the symptoms. Whereas with the young boy, it was because there's much more distractions going on in their life, there's less attention you can give to them. But the more salah and the more Islamic things you get them involved in, the more in control they are.
What advice would you give to married sisters or their husbands in dealing with sihr and the sihr of separation? What things can they do to help themselves and their husbands?
I think the most important thing that you have to realize is that your spouse is not your spouse at the moment. You have to emotionally detach yourself from the person, and you have to be quite selfless and not demand attention, and spend the hours that you need to on the treatment, and in the other time you need to give your spouse who's possessed space, and you need to try and spend time on yourself and look after yourself, because it can be quite emotionally tiring.
So, what can help the sisters with their own welfare? So, not looking at the husband, what can help the spouse of the possessed person?
I found most useful was to distract myself and give myself time to myself, read a book and relax. Only really think about the jinn and the jinn situation when I was doing the treatment, and I did not demand much from my husband, and I did not get into situations where we would argue because I know he's not himself at the moment.
So what's the situation like now? Have things improved? Is he cured? Um, how is the treatment if it's continuing as well?
At the moment, Alhamdulillah, everything is much better. When we argue, we have learned when to stop, when to start talking about things. He's much more in control of himself, but at times the jinn will surface and be mischievous, but it's not as severe as before. It's only when he's tired.
JazakAllah Khair, sister, for your contribution. This interview, inshallah, will help loads of people benefit. If you feel you've benefited, do leave us a message. If you need any help, you can email us at beatsihr@hotmail.co.uk. JazakAllah for listening. I pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants you all a cure and a speedy recovery. If you would like to do an interview, you can message me for that as well. Inshallah, let's get the message out there. Let's help our brothers and sisters in the ummah who are dealing with this situation. Continue to make your dua. Never give up hope. Inshallah, the cure will come. JazakAllah Khair. Asalaamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatahu.